thought this would be a good idea for my next video, rating other YouTubers' drafts. First up, I wanted to have a look at FPL Focal's draft. Thank you, Focal. You included me in your YouTuber drafts video you made a couple of weeks ago. Very grateful for that. So I thought it was only fair that I make you first up in mine. Notice he's gone for Flecken and the substitute Brentford goalkeeper as his two keepers. I actually really like this, particularly when you look at the other 4.5 million goalkeepers that are available. I'd say the best of them, I'm thinking like Dean Henderson, Rob Sanchez, Petrovic, Sells, and the other keeper from Nottingham Forest. None of them you can say are absolutely nailed on to start. And I think Flecken, of all of the 4.5 million goalkeepers, he's probably now emerging as the best, purely because he doesn't really have any competition for that position. And also, the substitute is 4 million. So if Flecken doesn't play, the substitute can come in. So I quite like that goalkeeper double up. And to be honest, I think that's going to be the template come the start of the season, provided obviously Brentford don't sign another keeper. There are a lot of Premier League teams signing multiple goalkeepers now. It's really confusing, to be honest. But anyway, I like the goalkeeper double up. Guardiola, Mikalenko and Trent in defence. He's gone for pretty strong defence, two sort of premium defenders in there. Can't really argue with that, to be honest. Guardiola, the run of games he had towards the end of last season, looking really attacking again in pre-season. He's going to be on that left-hand side of that Man City defence, playing that sort of inverted fullback, basically left-winger role that he did last season. I think he's going to be great. Mikalenko, I think Everton kept 13 clean sheets last season. Do I think they'll keep that level again this season? Maybe. Onana leaving I think will be a big loss, but they've got Idrissa Gueye amongst others that can play in that position. Mikalenko is definitely like the most attacking of all of the Everton defenders you can pick from. So I definitely think he's the best, and I like the pick. And then Trent at 7 million is just unbelievable value in this game. He's a player that you can reliably expect returns through 3 different means. Obviously, clean sheets, which I expect Liverpool to keep a fair few of this season. I think they get in and around, say, 10 clean sheets. Assists, obviously, one of the most creative players, best crossers in the league, etc. He's going to get some assists. I'd say between 10 and 15 assists would be a fair assessment. And then goals, between 3 and 5, I'd say, across the season. He plays at fullback, so he's not going to be like a number 9 striker kind of goals numbers. But his shots from outside the box, free kicks, etc., 5 goals, 3 to 5 goals wouldn't be a surprise, which means across the season, you're looking at potentially, 20 to 25 returns if you count clean sheets, goals, and assists. I was not even thinking about bonus points. With the way the bonus points work this season, if Trent has a good game, he's probably going to get 2 or 3 every game pretty much. So he's going to be really, really good in this game. And all of that for 7 million. I think he's a great option. Bruno Fernandes, Saka, Hudson-Odoi, Salah and Gordon. Salah, obviously, in my mind, has to be in your team for that Game Week 1 captaincy. That's my opinion. I think he's the outstanding captain in Game Week 1, probably alongside Isak, to be fair. I really like the Bruno Fernandes pick. He ticks all the boxes of a good FPL asset. On the pitch for 90 minutes, plays every game, takes penalties, free kicks, just Man United's absolute talisman. Bukayo Saka, personally, I don't take offence to this, Focal, but I think he's probably a little bit expensive for what he provides in this game. I do think Cole Palmer's probably a better option, and in my mind, I think you're better off actually saving some cash on him and going for someone a little bit cheaper. I've noticed, for example, you've not got Eze in this team. For me, I'd probably pick Eze over Saka and then maybe upgrade Hudson-Odoi to someone else as well, because yes, Nottingham Forest have really good opening fixtures, but I'm just not sure Hudson-Odoi is that good of an asset. It's just my opinion. I think they'll both do just fine, but I think that maybe one area this team could be improved. And then Anthony Gordon, I mean, he had such a solid season last year. Safe as houses in terms of starts. I think he got nearly 25 attacking returns last season, if I remember rightly. 7.5 million this year. Great value. He's a great option. Isak, I really like. I mean, every draft we look at in this video, I'm going to preempt, it probably has Isak in it. He's probably the best value striker in the game. On penalties for Newcastle, I mean, he's nailed on in my mind to score 20 goals if he stays fit this season. 20 to 25 goals easily. One player that I'm also not completely sure on is Kai Havertz. I just don't trust him as a number 9 to score that many goals. And also, I think with his versatility, he's not necessarily going to play every game at the number 9 either. We've seen last season where he played at times in midfield. You don't really want to be paying 8 million for a forward in FPL that's playing in midfield. And I feel like at points in the season, there's a risk that he could do that. Obviously, I'm not saying he's a bad player or anything like that, but again, I think you might be able to do a little bit better than Havertz, in my opinion. So overall, though, it's a really nice team, and the bench is really strong as well. Interesting that it's the first, I've seen a lot of teams basically that are 3-4-3, and Focal has actually gone 3-5-2 with a minimum price striker on the bench. I mean, it's a very viable way of doing it because you'd never really use your third bench player anyway. So Anderson and Barco on the bench. Barco, the best 4 million defender in the game in my mind. Anderson, probably the second best 4.5 million defender behind someone like Mykolenko. So the bench makes sense, formation makes sense. Just those few changes, in my opinion. All right, I put everyone's draft into the Fantasy Football Hub AI team rating tool because I thought that would be interesting. Focal gets a 91% team rating with 62.9 expected points. By the looks of the Fantasy Football Hub AI, the one thing holding him back, at least in his starting 11, is Mykolenko's expected points. I do think he picked up an injury just before the Euros, didn't he, which kept him out of quite a lot of the Ukraine games, if not all of them. So maybe that's factored into the expected points data you're seeing there. If you were to say get Anderson in, I think that team rating would go up purely on expected points, or Barco, purely on expected points alone. But, if he's fit to start the season, I would probably go for Mykolenko as first choice. And yeah, that's Oscar's team. It looks really, really strong. Next up, we've got FPL Harry. He's gone for a similar setup. Brentford's substitute goalkeeper in goal alongside Miguel of Nottingham Forest. Now, what I will say, to be fair, I had Sells in one of my drafts that I've made previously, and I'm already kind of put off by Sells as an option because Miguel has been signed this summer with Nottingham Forest realising that they're not very good at defending set pieces. So Miguel stands at 6'8". So he's obviously been brought in to help improve them from set pieces. And you think, if your club is signing a goalkeeper in the summer, they're signing him to play. And I think Miguel's going to start for Nottingham Forest. And one thing about Nottingham Forest, I would say, their expected goals conceded data last season was amongst the best in the league, particularly when Nuno took over. I think they rank easily in the top 6 of all teams in the Premier League for expected goals conceded. And obviously, we know Nuno from his time at Wolves is a really good defensive kind of manager. So yeah, I think Miguel is set to have a pretty good season. Guardiola and Saliba in defence. I think Saliba, you compare him to Gabriel. I'd say Gabriel probably offers a little bit more goal threat, but with Timber, Calafiori, etc., I think Saliba's a little bit more nailed. We saw at the start of last season when Arteta was, well, in my opinion, wrongly poking around with his defence. Gabriel was left out on a few occasions, and Saliba played all 38 games in the league. So I would say Saliba's more nailed than Gabriel, and I think that must be Harry's thinking behind picking him. Already spoke about Guardiola when going through Focal's team. Same with Mykolenko. Mykolenko, probably the most attacking defender from Everton, who are pretty good defensively. Probably the best, if not the best 4.5s. And Guardiola's going to get a bunch of attacking returns this season and plays for one of the best defences. Barco and Harwood Bellis, 2 4 million defenders, I think is a little bit of a risk. Barco at left back for Brighton. Yes, he's probably going to start the season. That's not guaranteed though, with Estupinan's injury. So, I guess having him is a bit of a risk, especially, if he's your kind of one bench cover. And then Harwood Bellis as well. He's probably not going to score that many points, but he is going to play every game. However, I do think Harry's thinking, though, is the fact he's got Rodgers on his bench instead, 5 million midfielder. That kind of compensates for the fact and allows him to have 2 4 million defenders instead. Who else haven't we talked about before? He's gone for Foden and Nkunku. Nkunku's had a really, really great pre-season for Chelsea. The manager's been singing his praises. Man City at home first up is obviously a tough fixture, but you're not picking a player just for one game week, right? You're picking him for the long run, and I think Nkunku, provided he stays injury-free, is going to be a good option. Foden at 9.5 million, I just have questions about Foden, I don't mean this in a derogatory way against Foden or Harry, but he massively overperformed his expected goals data last season. Some of the goals he scored obviously were absolutely outrageous. But I don't know if he's worth 9.5 million. That's just the thing in my mind. I just don't know if Foden's worth 9.5 million. He's definitely the best of the Man City midfielders. No doubt in my mind about it. But my thinking is, could you, and I guess it's probably hard with this team given, he's got Wood in there and Haaland is 9 million more than Wood. But maybe downgrading Foden to get someone else in might be a way to do it. And likewise Saka as well. I think Eze is going to be almost just as good in my mind as Foden this season. I know that's a bold prediction, but he's going to be the talisman for Crystal Palace on penalties, free kicks. Glasner has been playing really well, and that, just in general has Crystal Palace playing really well. So I would probably stick Eze in here for one of Foden and Saka. Watkins and Isak, absolutely undeniable that they're good options. Notice he's missing Haaland, as was Focal to be fair, and game week 1, Salah is the best captain, definitely against Ipswich, but then it comes to game week 2 and Haaland has Ipswich at home, and I just think that game week 2 captaincy, particularly at the moment when we've got unlimited transfers to pick our team, and you can almost sell Haaland after that time in my mind. I'd probably have him for that game, but you know, we all know Watkins and Isak are going to be good options. I've spoken about Chris Wood in my videos. I do like him. I do think he's going to start at least the opening few fixtures for Nottingham Forest, but with a Awoniyi on the bench, I would just question quite how long Chris Wood's going to stay in that team for. You know, if his form dips, he's already going to share minutes with Awoniyi in my mind. Awoniyi's going to come off the bench at times, but if Wood's form dips, Awoniyi straight in the team in my mind. I really do think Awoniyi is that good, so I guess just one thing to bear in mind with Chris Wood, but ultimately on the whole, I mean, it's FPL Harry. It's going to be a good team. So just looking at Harry's team in the Fantasy Football Hub tool. By the way, I didn't mention that when going through Focal's team, but I've got a 50% off link in my description to Fantasy Football Hub. You can plug any draft you make into this AI tool. Again, AI team rating and expected points total, courtesy of Fantasy Football Hub. So sign up in the description if you're interested. They have Miguel currently as the starting Nottingham Forest goalkeeper according to the points projection. Guardiola, Saliba, Barco expected to do quite well. Salah, the outstanding captain, best player for expected points in game week 1. Saka, Foden, both expected to do fairly well. Foden and Nkunku, interestingly, have very similar expected points when they face each other. Watkins, Isak and Wood up front, all in a, well, Watkins and Wood all around 5 expected points with Isak on 6.6. Like I said, probably a couple of changes I would personally make to this team, but ultimately, not only is it FPL Harry, it is also a really good team in its own right. Next up, I wanted to look at FPL Raptors team. Now, because he's also an affiliate of Fantasy Football Hub, he's already got his team rating and expected points there, so you can see that for yourself. So I'm not going to bother with that slide with this one. He's also gone for Miguel in goal, Saliba, Guardiola and Trent in defence. That's probably the strongest defence we've seen so far, and to be honest, really do rate that. I think all 3 players are going to do really well across the season. Eze, who I mentioned when going through Harry's team, I really like him as an option. I think 7 million is a great price. You know, he's going to play probably 90 minutes every game, take the penalties, take the free kicks, be the talisman for Crystal Palace, right? Glasner, under Glasner, they've been playing really well. I think the talisman for a team that are reborn basically under a new manager, I think he's going to be really good. Cole Palmer, Salah and Saka, obviously gone really strong in the midfield with no Haaland and no Watkins alongside. It's a 2 up front, another 2 up front team. Now, I really quite like the 3 of them. I can't deny that they're not good options. Again, I just go back to the fact, Palmer and Saka, I would question, is Cole Palmer really going to replicate the level of returns that he got last season? Obviously, he's a stellar player and I think it's going to still be that Chelsea talisman. But I would just ask the question, be a bit controversial, I guess, and say, do you think Cole Palmer is really going to match the level of returns he got last year with Nkunku in the Chelsea team as well? I think under Enzo, they will be slightly improved on where they were. The returns will probably be shared more around the team. I could be completely wrong. But I do think the level of returns that Palmer gets will be reduced this season. And also at 10.5 million, Saka also at 10. You know, that's a lot of money to spend. I think maybe you could drop the 2 of them to slightly cheaper other penalty taking options. I'm thinking Bruno Fernandes potentially in Bumo if Tony leaves Brentford, and then go for Haaland in your team, because I really like Haaland for that game week 2 captaincy. He's obviously gone Salah. I really like Salah. I think he's the best captain game week 1, no doubt in my mind. Rodgers, great option in the team as well. Been in great form for Villa in the pre-season. I think he's probably going to start at least the first few games for them, and at 5 million, he's really good value as well. Konsa, you know, there are so many good 4.5 million defenders. Anderson, Konsa, Mikalenko, Martinez, Nori later on in the season. You can name so many. So ultimately, you know, I don't really think there's going to be a whole lot between them. So I like Konsa. Barco is the strongest in my mind of the 4 million defenders. And then Stewart, 4.5 million striker, just there as like a 3rd bench option, isn't he? Allowing him to play a 3-5-2. We got Let's Talk FPL up next. He's gone for another Brentford double up. Flecken and Valdimarsson in goal. Is that how you say it? Something like that. I really like that double up. Like I said, I think, you know, they're 2. What you're going to get by having that is the starting Brentford goalkeeper, right? So I like it. Virgil van Dijk, Guardiola and Nico. Is it Neko? Neko or Nico? Neko Williams, I believe it is, from Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest have 3 really good fixtures to open up the season. And when looking, like I said, when I'm looking at Miguel as a keeper, under Nuno towards the back end of last season, they were in the top 5 or 6 of all teams in the Premier League for expected goals conceded. They're a really solid defence. They conceded more goals, to be fair, than their expected goals conceded, but a lot of that came from set pieces, which is why the new keeper, Miguel, has been brought in. Neco Williams is probably the most attacking of those Nottingham Forest defenders as well. Bournemouth at home first up. They're traditionally actually stronger at home at the City Ground where they play. So I think he could be a really good option. Virgil van Dijk, he's going to play every game for Liverpool, no doubt in my mind. Actually does offer a fair bit of goal threat as well, despite being a centre-back. I'd make the comparison between him and Robertson. They're both the same price. I would probably suggest Robertson is just that little bit better. Obviously, a little bit less nailed though. But Robertson, when you look at his expected goals and expected assists per 90 data, he actually put up slightly better numbers than Trent did last season. So personally, I think I would prefer Robertson over Virgil van Dijk. But the counter to that argument, and probably what Andy would say, is Virgil van Dijk's going to play every game. He's going to play 38 games if he's fit. Saka, Bruno, Eze and Kunku and Gibbs-White in the midfield. Note in here, there's no Salah. And actually, if I were to pick which player out of Salah and Haaland would I want to leave out of my team, I would probably say Salah, because game week 1, the captaincy, Isak, Andy's gone for Isak right against Southampton. I really don't think there's much between Isak and Salah, but there is a big difference between Haaland and everyone else in sort of game weeks 2, 3 and 4. And looking at the projected goals according to the market spread, bookies data, etc., Haaland is just so far ahead of the rest of the players in the league. So I quite like Andy's decision to do that. Spoken about Saka, Bruno already, Eze, they tick all the boxes of good FPL options, right? Each of them will probably be on the pitch for 90 minutes, take penalties. In fact, Andy, his entire midfield and strikers, apart from Nkunku, are penalty takers. Gibbs-White, the penalty taker for Nottingham Forest, is going to be on the pitch for 90 minutes every game, in my mind. Bournemouth at home first up, really good first 3 fixtures. Great value for the potential of returns that he can get. Yeah, I really like Gibbs-White as an option. I think the rest of the players we've kind of already spoken about when going through other teams. He's gone for Dunk as his 4.5 million defender. Like I said, I'm not really going to get too touchy about the 4.5s. I didn't mention him as an option, but of course he is. And then 2 4 million defenders, Wout Faes, and then, one in Wout Faes, and then Stewart, 4.5 million striker, allowing him to play another 3-5-2. Just crack that into the AI team rating tool. 91% for Andy, according to this. What it hasn't worked out yet, well, FF Hub's AI team does not expect Neco Williams to start the first game. I think it's a little bit up into the air as to how Nottingham Forest will line up defensively. I suggest if he does, he's probably up there with Dunk, maybe a little bit higher than Dunk for expected points. The rest of the team, all expected to do well. Isak is his captain, Salah is apparently the top scoring, has the top expected points for game week 1, and Saka, according to Fantasy Football Hub, is actually a little bit above Isak, so maybe that's somewhere where he could go. And then Haaland is even higher than Saka, so yes, I actually believe that Isak is the best captain in my mind, but this is what the expected points data is saying. Just thought it'd be useful to put his team through the tool. To round things off then, we've got FPL Fran, who's gone for Fabianski and Henderson in goal. Like I said, I'd just be a little bit cautious with Dean Henderson, just not entirely sure who's going to be that first choice Crystal Palace keeper. I'm sure Fran, you already knows that, right? Just hold him. If he's not looking like he's going to start the season, then go for Johnston. Like I said, I think Crystal Palace defensively are going to be good this season, and he clearly believes that because he's got Henderson and Anderson in his team. 4 million keepers, doesn't really matter who you pick, to be honest. I think Bentley and Fabianski and maybe the Brentford guy's name I've forgotten now. It's so long I've forgotten it. But anyway, I think those guys are probably the 3 strongest ones. So if Areola gets injured, Fabianski's going to be straight in that West Ham team. As we know, there are no starting 4 million goalkeepers in the game at the moment. Trent, Addison and Porro. Tottenham have got some really good opening fixtures, to be fair, and I would be surprised if Porro didn't at least come away with some attacking returns in those first few fixtures. Dan Burn, I'd have a little bit of question mark about Dan Burn, just as to how safe his place in that Newcastle team is. They've got quite a lot of defensive, certainly left-footed options that can play, both at left-back and Lloyd Kelly, who can play centre-back now. So I would just ask a bit of a question as to whether Dan Burn is going to play enough to be worthwhile picking in your team, especially when there's so much competition amongst those 4.5 million defenders. Harwood Bellis at 4 million, fine. I mean, he's going to play every game, isn't he, and score you points when you need him, and by the looks of the way this team is structured, he's going to be 3rd on the bench most weeks. Bruno, Saka, Rodgers, and Nkunku and Eze. I think we covered all 5 of those players already, so I won't speak too much about them. Haaland, Armstrong, and Isak up front. One player we haven't covered yet is Armstrong. Now, he at 5.5 million has one main rival, and that's João Pedro. Now, João Pedro's numbers, obviously, are going to be better than Armstrong, but Armstrong is going to play every minute of every game for Southampton and take their penalties. Last season in the Championship, he played all 46 games. It's very rare, even for defenders in the Championship, to play all 46 games. So that really just does solidify how nailed on he is in that Southampton team. And I'd be surprised if he didn't score at least 10 goals this season. And for 5.5 million, I don't really think you need much more than that. Finally then, just plug in FPL Fran's team into the AI team rating tool. 87% for this one, 59.7 expected points. I think the main thing that holds it back is the goalkeepers here. The Fantasy Football Hub AI tool does not expect Henderson to start. Johnston is their pick. Well, I'm going to say the AI's pick to be the first choice Crystal Palace keeper. That would probably boost it into the 90s if it had Johnston in it. Clearly, Fran believes that Henderson starts, and I think it's pretty much 50-50 between them, to be honest. And we should get a view, I'll be fair, we should get a view as to who's going to be first choice before the season starts. And I think quite logically, picking the first choice Crystal Palace keeper is a good way to go. Suggesting Haaland captain for game week 1. Noted, obviously, no Salah, didn't cover that before. No Salah in this team, but Haaland as the captain in game week 1, I think makes sense. Obviously, this is a really good team. All right, and that's the end of the video. I thought that'd be an interesting concept. While I was actually editing this one, I noticed there's an account, Nathan Bacon FPL. You're going to have to trust me on this one. I didn't realize he already made a video covering this topic. So what I'll do, if you want to watch it and get his views as well, I'll link that in the description below. Sorry, Nathan, I haven't plagiarized your content. I just realized while I was editing this video that you had done the same idea. So yeah, please everyone, please check out Nathan Bacon's video as well, because it's really, really good. Thank you very much for watching this one. Obviously, I'll link all the YouTubers that I've covered in this video. But to be honest, if you're watching this video, you already know who those guys are. So you don't really need a link, but I'll do it anyway. They're all great. You know, I'd recommend their content to absolutely anyone. Very helpful, very useful, of course, alongside mine. Like I said, I put all of these teams through the FF Hub, Fantasy Football Hub AI Team Rater. Now, if you want to get access to that yourself, like I said, there's a link in the description below to get yourself 50% off. I think that's it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video.